Hello and welcome to The Current Thing with me, Nick Dixon. So we had a slight break, a slight pause, which is the cardinal sin in podcasts, but I took a week off because I was ill, and the problem was the guest I booked was Andrew Doyle, who's also kind of my boss at work. So even if I was well enough to try and soldier on through the podcast, you can't really say, sorry Andrew, I'm not coming into work, but still do the podcast. So there was a bit of a problem I got myself in there, so we missed a week, but we're back with a top guest. You'll know him as the co-host of Trigonometry, which I invented, but we don't need to go into that. Now on GB News Headliners, which I also named. Basically, I invented everything, guys. The sooner you accept that, the better. And he's just done a stand-up comedy tour. You'll have probably seen his viral videos. Your friend and mine. Of course, I'm talking about Mr. Francis Foster. Thanks for doing this, Francis.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, Nick. Yeah, mate. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to chatting. We always have a laugh. It's always good fun.
Yeah. We caught up last night, and it was a good laugh. And I thought, let's capture that gold. Let's capture that on the old podcast. Because you were doing Headliners, which is a fun show. I'm sure everyone knows about Headliners. Don't need to go on about it. But I thought we'd start with, you got in a bit of a Twitter spat recently. We don't need to go into too much detail on it. You got in a little thing with Matt Walsh, and there was this general debate. More than the gossip, I'm more interested in the general debate about how we approach wokeness. Do we have to be polite and win hearts and minds, or do we just crush them into the ground, which is more Matt Walsh's style? And as a sort of follow-up to that, Constantine had written this tweet. I fear the biggest problem with wokeness isn't the undeniable stupidity of wokeness, it's the inevitable backlash. And I was thinking, I'm all right with the backlash. I'm kind of ready for the backlash at this stage. Like, bring on the backlash. Maybe that's me. Maybe I've gone scorched earth. But he's still sort of on this centrist thing. Let's win hearts and minds and be careful. Whereas I'm more like, burn it all down. So any thoughts on that, and where do you stand?
Well, I think the thing that I always think, Nick, is that it's not really about us. It's not really about the Matt Walshes. It's not really about the people occupying this space, the podcasters, the broadcasters, the online personalities. It's about the ordinary people who are caught up in this nonsense. It's about the ordinary people who can get fired, who can lose their jobs for saying completely innocuous things, which 5, 7, 8 years ago, none of us would have batted an eyelid at. Yet now, if you say these things, you get into a lot of problems. And to me, the struggle and the fight has always been about those people. The reality is, for us, we're always going to be all right because we've got our followings. You've got your following. You're doing great work with the Daily Skeptics. You're going to be absolutely fine. But if you work for a corporation, if you work for a company, if you work for local government, you don't have that safety net and you do not have that luxury. And I think it's very important, and it's our responsibility, and however we want to look at it, in order to make sure that we can convince as many people as possible that the way that we look at the world, that the way that we perceive things is the correct way of doing it. And I've always thought that you can never win hearts and minds, in order to use that phrase, by being antagonistic. You might pander to your base, you might engage with the hard line, but you're not going to win over the people who are uncertain.
Fair point. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I don't know if we're going to be all right. You might be all right. I sometimes think, people keep trying to get me to resign from GB News because of Mark Stein, which I've never quite understood. We won't go into that rabbit hole. Oh, yeah, they think because Stein was sort of had that contract problem and obviously, he wasn't exactly sacked, but they offered him a contract that wasn't very favourable, let's say, and he probably couldn't have signed that contract. So then he left. But people say, I have to resign in solidarity. Even though I've never met Mark Stein, I don't necessarily agree with the way he's handled it. To me, if anything, I probably shouldn't say this, but if anything, they're saying I should stand up in a Spartacus moment with Stein, whereas to me, he's kind of thrown other people under the bus by dominating the narrative and putting us all under pressure, where people are harassing me to resign. I'm like, a little bit selfish. But the Stein nuts completely disagree, and they all sort of shout at me and say, you've got no integrity. And I think I do have integrity, but I'll resign for my own reasons. And if anything, I have to sort of calm down my self-destructive urge to just resign from everything all the time. But they're saying, you've got no integrity because of that.
Well, look, I think it's very, very easy for people on the sidelines to start making comments. I get people going to me, you do the easy thing and whatever else. And I'm like, hang on a minute, mate. I was in the comedy industry and openly criticising it. I went on the biggest comedy podcast, the biggest podcast in the world, and slammed that industry for the best part of 4.5 hours. Like, what do you do behind your faceless avatar and your 22 followers?
That's what I always say. It's like you've got numbers you've got an anonymous picture, you've got a profile with numbers in it. I'm out here saying mad stuff on the national TV 3 times a week. You know, I'm getting cancelled by the whole comedy industry, as you recall, because I went on Trigonometry to talk about it. I'm getting in 2 national newspapers and the Jeremy Vine show. Do you think I like that? And I'm doing all this stuff, and it's like, Nick's got no integrity because he won't follow my agenda that I don't even understand. Obviously, the thing is, it's about Ofcom. Ofcom's a bit of a nightmare because it regulates broadcasters. There's nothing you can do about that. So what I think we have to do is attack Ofcom at the legislative level, and you have to say, you know, the online safety bill goes too far and all this kind of stuff, and all the stuff that Toby Young's really good at. And let's do all that. But once those rules are established, what are we going to do? We're there. If you just break all the rules, GB will just end in a day. They'll be hit with ridiculous fines, or they'll have their license revoked.
Yeah, and look, but these people don't care because to them, it doesn't bother them. It doesn't affect them in the slightest. They're only interested in being morally right. They're essentially the right-wing version of the woke left. They have the same values, the same ethos, the same beliefs. Really, it's just a couple of things that are missing. And you're never going to convince people like that because they are the hardline minority. And that's just the way it is. And you just say to those people, go on, mate, crack on. Enjoy being James Dellingpole.
Let's not diss James. He's doing very well. He just sold out 900 seats at the Emmanuel Centre. So,
I like James. He's had a pop at me, so there's one for him.
Oh, has he? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to be friends with everyone. You know me, Francis. Just love everyone. But it's tricky because I do the Weekly Skeptic with Toby, and people will think it's like me trying to take over from James. It wasn't at all. We were going to do interviews at first with me just interviewing people, and Toby was barely going to be on it. It's transformed into me and Toby, you know, doing bants. So it looks like it's the new London Calling, but it's different really. But yeah, James is smashing it. He just sold out 900 seats at the Emmanuel Centre, but. Hey, maybe there's a market for the people you think are nutters. I mean, people are very passionate. They do love Stein. They love free speech. I love free speech as well, but I don't think free speech includes just pointlessly breaking Ofcom rules and getting a £5 million fine like ITV. But hey,
but this is it. This is it. You know,
you're getting a call from right now.
Yeah. Sorry, it's just my producer's messaging me because I've got to go and pick something up after this. Apologies. Okay. No, the thing is with that was obviously a joke about James. You know, and he does really, really, really fantastic podcasts. People enjoy him. It's just a joke. I don't want to start beef with James.
Yeah, another beef. You've got so many beefs going now, Francis.
I don't know. I try and be nice. And I'm like, let's not get into any arguments today, Francis. And before I know it, I've made a joke, and then everything has erupted, and then all of a sudden there's 63 million people. Yeah. Anyway, it was a joke. So, but we were sorry about that. So we were talking about Mark Stein and Ofcom, and I think the thing that we all need to understand is that Twitter and the internet isn't a real place. It's not a real place. And as a result of that, you can't take what anyone says on there that seriously. And if you do, you will go insane because Twitter is insane. Yeah,
fair enough. And I think it's interesting what you say about real people. They're more vulnerable in a sense because they're in their teaching job or whatever. They don't use the right pronouns for a student and they get sacked, which happened to that maths teacher, for example. But at the same time, they don't understand necessarily that they are protected, they're anonymous, whereas we're out there and this is actually a job. For whatever reason, we've ended up in this job. We didn't want to. We just wanted to be comedians, guys. We wanted to make people laugh. The world changed. Now we're in this job where we say things. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that being your job. Sometimes people watch at home, they see it on the telly, they think it's all drama to them. But they've got to compare it to their own job, not to some ideal, I think. And I think in their job, I always think they're probably putting pronouns in their email signature and staying quiet. And some people have said to me, we are, Nick, but you're out there to be the free speech hero. Their words, not mine. And I understand that. You're there to represent them in a way that they can't. But you've also got to be fair and be like, it took me 11 years to get this job. I'm just going to torch it for no reason. And also for a reason I don't agree with. If it's something I agree with, if you tell me I have to wear a mask or something, or at the studio, or wear a mask on air, or say abortion is great up to 9 months, I'm obviously not going to do it. But, everyone's got their own principles.
Yeah, well, this is it. And it's very easy, like we've discussed before, for people behind anonymous, faceless accounts to lecture others who are in the public eye and are in the firing line about what they should or shouldn't do. And you just go, no, And it's when people say to me about trigonometry. It's got to the point now where I end up being collared by both the right and the left. and it doesn't matter what I say or do. The reality is you're never going to please everyone, and you're going to see this the more you go through your career, the bigger you get. Like I was walking down the road in my area in South London, and came across this comedian who I used to know from the circuit, and he was like, "Francis, how you doing?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm good." And then we had a bit of back and forth, and he went, "I think trigonometry is disgusting." I was like, "What?" He goes,
I want to know who that is now. Can you tell me after who that is?
Yeah, of course I'll tell you after. And he goes,
could be one of any number of people for the comedy industry. And it's not like Andrew's book in New Puritans. He talks about an old friend calling him a Nazi and just suddenly being seriously on a rant calling him a Nazi.
Yeah, and this is it. And he goes, you're spreading hatred against trans people. And he goes, and the trans girl, Brianna Gay, that was murdered, 16 years old, which we both heard of. And it's obviously an awful, tragic case. Anyway, now I didn't say you did it, but I'm like, hang on, mate.
That's generous. You didn't actually pull the trigger, but you're there or thereabouts. You drove the getaway car. That's nuts.
Yeah, and then he was just going, I've been, I receive, because he's a gay guy. He goes, I receive homophobic abuse online, and this is because of you, the culture war that you, the mainstream media, and Question Time have started. I'm like, what
Question Time?
Question Time
on the BBC.
Yeah, has started this kind of toxic atmosphere, and then halfway through his rant, where he was becoming more and more angry, this bloke walked past, just leaned in halfway through, and went, "I love trigonometry," and just carried on walking.
That is so perfect. That's hilarious.
It is.
Well, there you go. So that exactly proves it. You're right there in the sensible centrist in the middle. I had both sides. Well, one side hating you, one side loving you, but potentially both sides hating you, depending on the day.
I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. Last week, it felt like every fucker was hating me, mate.
Wow. Does it get to you? Does it get to you, the whole culture war? Do you ever just want to quit the whole culture war thing and just say, "Can I go?" Because the problem is, right? We have certain skills, a very specific set of skills, and we just wanted to be comedians, as I said. And maybe we can go back to that point because actually, the culture war, we didn't start it. I would say, like Billy Joel, we didn't start the fire. We can get into that. But do you also just get sick of it and just think, I just want to go and work in a lighthouse or something?
Yeah, I do. There are periods where I'm just like, can I really have another discussion about what is a woman? Do you know what I mean? Are we going to keep doing this? Time after time after time. And you go, well... But it's important. It's important to have these discussions. It's important not so much to have the discussion, but just to see that to show the people that you can have a discussion about this, that you can share ideas, that you can discuss, that you can push back, and that doesn't make you racist, bigoted, whatever else. And also as well, and the thing that I dislike most about wokeism, and I use wokeism, this kind of progressive mindset, whatever you want to call it. Neo-Marxism as your great hero, and all-round good chap JBP would call it. The reason that I have a problem with it is that it's fundamentally anti-human, and by that it doesn't believe in forgiveness. It doesn't allow transgression, it doesn't allow flaws, it doesn't allow faults, it doesn't allow you to fail. And if you think about it, the moments you've really grown as a human being, all of us, are when we've made mistakes, we've made errors, and we've been forced to look at our own behaviours, our own patterns, our own opinions, and challenge them and grow. And by cancelling people, getting rid of them, firing them, demeaning them, dogpiling them, what you're essentially doing is preventing them with the opportunity for growth, which is why I'm so against it.
Yeah, interesting point. Yeah, there's no mechanism for forgiveness, as people like Douglas Murray have said, and many others. Yeah, when I sort of get sick of it is when there's a guy now with quite a large following, and all he does is go through watching GB News in great detail, or GB News adjacent things, and writing long threads about how evil we are. And then at the end, he puts links to Ofcom to complain about us. I'm like, this is extraordinary. And I still can't even be bothered looking into what he even does for a job. I can't imagine sitting through an interview. I did an interview with Andrew Bridge, and he watched the whole thing looking for like libelous claims and things like this. And it's like, I'm just interviewing. I'm not a journalist, so I'm just sort of let the guest speak and go, oh, cool. And then it's like, he didn't challenge him. I didn't even read it because I can't look at his garbage. But that's when I sometimes think, God, wouldn't it be nice just not be hated. And like you say, you're probably on a much higher level of hate than me, and everyone's on a different level. Andrew Dawes on a level, Toby Young. There's different levels to this game of hatred, but it's horrible, isn't it? Because you just think, oh, I'm a nice enough guy. Well, you just think, God, do I want this?
Well, this is it, because when we started out in comedy, I just wanted to be an amazing comedian, like my heroes, Chris Rock, Chappelle, Bill Hicks. Those are the kind of comics that I aspired to be, that I wanted, that made me want to do comedy. I never sought out this life. And then just more and more, I just saw things go gradually more and more insane, and it felt like being in the comedy industry, which is part of the liberal arts. It felt very much at the epicenter of it, and I just saw people who I considered rational and sane slowly become demented with this, whatever you want to call it, neo-Marxism, progressivism, whatever it is.
Neo-Marxism, postmodernism.
Yeah, and they just kind of went nuts, and you couldn't talk to them anymore, because every time you tried to have a discussion with them, they'd end up just shouting at you.
Yeah, a bit of an ideological capture, quite disturbing. But yeah, and this idea that we started it was you and Question Time. Yeah. I mean, I would say really we were just going along trying to be comedians, and when I started 2011, this stuff was just starting a bit. I was in this final, I may have said it on your podcast, So You Think You're Funny, which was a sort of big comedy competition. All these famous people have won it in the past or been in the final. I was in the final. It was an all-female judging panel, and the sort of word on the street was it has to be a woman that wins this year. Previous years, it had just been men for like decades, and no one cared. Whether that's a good or bad thing, you can decide. But that year, it has to be a woman, and then of course a woman won it. And I was called misogynist in the review. I'm like, oh, we've entered a new world here. So that was the start of it in comedy when I noticed it, and then it just got worse and worse. And the reason I say they started it as such is that we're just sort of responding. I can't speak for you, but I was just responding, going, okay, there's no opportunities for me in this business now. I'm being told I can't have things based on my immutable characteristics. That seems a bit off. So there's no opportunity, so I'll have to just figure out something else. Now, of course, they can always come back, as they have, and say, you're just shit, and you were too shit, and X and Y have done well. And there are lots of people have done well. There are brilliant comedians. Sean Walsh, he also got cancelled, but he came back. There are all these brilliant comedians have done well. So perhaps I just wasn't good enough. That might be an element of it. But I also, just like you, was just sick of the toxic cesspit of an industry.
Yeah, and I don't even mind. And this is the thing: if somebody has, progressive, liberal opinions, whatever they are, whatever words you want to use, words no longer mean what they used to. I think we all know that. And I genuinely don't mind. I don't care. If you're a socialist, be a socialist. If you're right wing, if you whatever you want to be. What the problem that I have is when you start to impose your values on other people, and you start to basically stop these people from speaking, and you stop them from progressing in their careers because you think that is the wrong way of thinking. To me, that is disgusting and disgraceful, and a complete antithesis to what the art should really be, which is freedom of expression. If you think about all the great comedians, or the comedians that you respect and loved and looked up to, how many of them would have been accepted now? Would Patrice O'Neill be able to do what he did now? Would he be accepted? Or would he be just called the black face of white supremacy? And he would have been as well. He probably would, to be fair to him, would have written a dynamite routine about it.
Yeah. Well, he was truly fearless, and he was, to me, the greatest comic alive. Then he died, sadly. Then he became the greatest comic who's died. But he did Elephant in the Room. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out. Truly, perhaps the greatest comedian, one of the greatest of all time. Total truth teller. Yeah, you're right. And funnily, like people like George Carlin, where would they be now? Because people like Alex Jones will play clips of him on InfoWars. He certainly wouldn't be on the woke side. We can all agree on that.
No, because we all know that what this movement is it's completely authoritarian, which is why I have such a problem with it. And as a result, they're going to deny you opportunities. They're going to misrepresent what you're saying. They're going to slander you. They're going to do all of these types of things to you. And that's the moment where I'm not. I mean, you probably won't believe this. I'm not combative by nature.
No, I know you're not.
But I just believe that there comes a point where, you, as a human being and as a man, you have to say no. Enough. Yeah,
absolutely. You've got to stand up. But this thing about speaking of comedy, actually, you asked me last night if I missed doing stand up, and I said I didn't. I don't never really think about it, which is true. I barely thought about it. I thought about it for one reason the other day. I was thinking, would I be happier if I actually had gigs still? Because my mate asked me, and that's the only time I really thought about it. Surprisingly, because of lockdowns, I got used to not doing it anymore. It's all I'd done for 11 years relentlessly.
Yeah.
But the most I'd ever taken off was like 2 weeks. Suddenly we couldn't do it for 3 months. And so it kind of eased me out of it, and I realized I was actually happier not doing it. So I actually never miss it. I came back and did one gig with actually Jordan Peterson coming on before me at the backyard, which was great. And I was still had it, Francis. And I made the outrageous claim to you last night that I'm one of the best comedians to have quit. Like, normally when a comedian quits, they're just rubbish, right? Whereas everyone acknowledges I was doing, even if you hate me, I was doing Comedy Store weekends, I was doing Comedy Central. Actually, people don't acknowledge that now. Someone told me they were in a green room in Liverpool, and someone said, oh, well, Nick Dixon's not a proper comedian. He just says he is on GB. He never actually did comedy properly. I'm like, and then this guy come back and no, he did weekends at the Comedy Store, which is like, for listeners, that's like the sort of benchmark of the comedy circuit in the UK. And he's like, no, he did everything he could do. And this guy was like, oh, I didn't know that. And the guy saying it hadn't done the Comedy Store. Just some chancer mouthed it off. And it's like, I did 11 years of this shit and I don't even get the credit. But I walked away from it because was generally so disgusted and was actually just happier moving into this weird area we're in now. I don't know what we're in now, but we're sort of quasi-humorous commentators. I don't know, it's a new niche.
Yeah, it's a new niche. And they said the same thing about me when I went on Rogan. And then I basically told them that they were all fucking pricks, which I stand by. And they got very upset. And they always said to me, oh, you're racist, you're not a proper comedian. And I was going to respond, and then...
Which is worse? Which is the worst accusation? You're racist. And
comedian,
by the way, you're
mate.
not a proper comedian.
Yeah.
Wait, I'm a proper comedian, mate.
Yeah.
Calm down.
Yeah, exactly.
Racist bit, you got me. You got me on that one.
But you just look at these people, and they don't have good intentions, number one. And number two, and this is going to probably sound quite harsh, and they're not very intelligent. They're not particularly smart. I remember one person, one comedian, said that I was a right-wing incel. Now, if you had actually asked him
Incel was right, but right-wing?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, mate. I'm a centrist incel. But
I'm a MGTOW. It's a choice of me. Men going their own way. It's a choice, guys. I had a very attractive
That's what I
ex-girlfriend.
should do, man. That's what my missus has done, mate. She goes her own way as well. But you just know that these people, there's not good faith. Like, I know if I went up to this guy and said to him, and I basically confronted him. Number two, one, he'd fall apart, and number two, he wouldn't even be able to explain what an incel is. He'd be like, oh, it's a loser who just spends all day with his mum or whatever. And you go, and if I asked him what the words right wing meant, he wouldn't even be able to describe that either. He'd be like, oh, you hate the NHS, and you just go, oh, these are just not very bright people who are using words that they don't understand in order to throw, digital rocks at an avatar in order to please their friends and escalate higher up the comedy circuit. That's essentially what's going on there. It's not even you. It's they don't know you. They've got no idea who you are, your opinions, your beliefs. You're just an avatar to them, which they can then use in order to demonstrate virtue, in order to climb up a ladder. That's all it is.
Yeah. One point on there, incels get a tough rap when really they're only just people struggling to get girlfriends. I mean, most of them are harmless. Okay, there's the occasional one, very tiny percentage, who does something terrible and violent, but most of them are just like young men struggling, and everyone hates them. It's like, guys. But on the comedy point, the comedy industry has really sort of boomer takes on the culture war in general, doesn't it? It sounds like a kind of Guardian think piece from 5 years ago. It's so sort of boomer and poor on it just doesn't get the nuance. It's not that interesting. Haven't you found it? It tends to have the most Route 1 BBC take on everything.
Well, this is it. Look, so for instance, number one, we'll just touch on the incels because we interviewed a evolutionary psychologist called Matthew Costello, and he is he's at the University of Texas, and he is an expert in evolutionary psychology, in particular incels. It was his area of study, so we actually looked into it. And do you know,
is it William Costello?
Yeah, that's it, William Costello.
Yeah.
Thank
I know
you.
this guy.
Sorry,
Yeah.
William. And he actually said that, according to his research, most incels are actually left-wing. They're mostly
Really?
left-wing.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, they're mostly left-wing. There's a significant proportion of them that are actually ethnic minority. And a lot of them actually have autism. and anxiety-based disorders and depression. So what you're actually talking about is a group of men who have disconnected from society, who have in a sense given up on everything. Now, I'm not saying that's the right thing to do. I don't think that is how you get better or that's how you win. But these are men with there's some real mental health problems there. And it's just been taken by people and used as a punchline in the same way that Brexit was used as a punchline by a group of people who have no understanding or sensitivity or empathy for anybody. They're just trying to get a cheap laugh. And you go, you don't know what you're talking about. And I remember when I had that realisation, I just stopped engaging. It's like when they were talking to me about Rogan. Yeah, but Rogan's this, Rogan's that, right? I'm like, have you met him? Do you know him? Have you listened to any of his stuff? You haven't. So why would I listen to your opinion on anything?
Yeah. A couple of things
and that's why most comedy is so boring. Because it's made by a lot of people who don't think deeply about anything. They don't have particularly interesting experiences. They don't read. And they give surface level opinions about topics that they have no understanding of.
Yeah, on the incel thing, they use it to mean something else. I mean, I've been called it twice on my own show that I named headliners by a comedian on there, and then I've also been called misogynist. Bit harsh, because this misogyny thing, women will send me tweets saying thanks for standing up for us, regarding things like safe spaces for women. Mm-hmm. So it's quite strange that me as a misogynist is the one standing up for women. It's a strange alliance between misogynists and TERFs. You know, it's quite weird that even on the TERF side, though, the radical feminist side, they always end up blaming everything on misogyny. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
That's the only thing that bothers me about their movement is they're right that biological men shouldn't be in women's changing rooms. Obviously, they shouldn't be in women's sports. Obviously. But then they go, and this is just classic misogyny. I'm thinking, whoa, what did men do? But of course, they are men who are trying to get into the changing room. But isn't it more that they're sort of radical leftists or trans activists, rather, and maybe not even trans people, but because that's a tiny percentage, but people speaking on behalf of trans people, these radical activists, isn't that the problem rather than misogyny?
I think the real problem. Yeah, I think the real problem is trans people being used as political footballs and what has become a deeply toxic part of the culture war. And what you're seeing more and more is, that gender ideology is coming into schools. I've had teachers reach out to me a lot. We've seen it in Scotland, where it seems nobody in the SNP knows what a woman is. 7 rapists in Scottish prisons, etc. So that's a real problem. The problem is that we then take people who have gender dysphoria, such as trans people, who are always a tiny percentage of the population, most of whom just want to live their life. We've interviewed around 5 or 6 of them, from trans women to trans men to detransitioners to people just living with gender dysphoria on Trigonometry. And the reality is, as with most people in society, they just want to get along and live their lives. And then you've got the argument, and you've got people exploiting loopholes in order to be, shall we put it, abusive and predatory.
Yeah, and you've done loads of work covering that. That was one thing people said to you recently. Well, what have you done against, in this movement? And then Konstantin linked autistically to about 30 videos that you guys have put out tackling the sort of radical trans movement, or whatever you'd call it. Yeah. And this is it. So, you've got to accept as well that just that those people on the right are just like the woke left. You're never going to be pure enough. You're never going to do enough. You're never going to be as hardline enough. And that's fine. You just say to those people, great, you do you. That's fine. That's the only way to deal with it. Since you mentioned Rogan, what was it like? What was it like doing Rogan? What was Rogan like, and what was your main takeaway from all that trip to America? I mean, you went over there, you met Rogan, you met Matt Walsh, who you've now fallen out with, you met Sam Harris, whose career you ended. I mean, it was a hell of a tour.
Yeah, my mate, every time he sees me, just goes to me, I used to really enjoy Sam Harris, Francis.
Yeah, why did you take that from us? Yeah. Why did you destroy that? So, he's gone a bit mad, hasn't he, Sam? I mean, I don't know. I'm sure, I don't want to say he's gone mad. He's taken some strange positions that, from my perspective, seem a bit bonkers. And famously, in case the listener somehow doesn't know what I'm talking about, they were Francis and Constantine had Sam Harris on Trigonometry, and he made this bizarre point that it doesn't matter if Joe Biden, or is it Hunter Biden or Joe Biden?
Hunter Biden
has children in his basement. He's still better than Trump. Dead kids in the basement. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
And that went viral, and it didn't go very well for Sam, and it seemed to end in him deleting his Twitter account. Although that may have been later because of Elon Musk taking over Twitter, but I don't know. It didn't go well for him. But you guys weren't trying to stitch him up, presumably.
No, not at all. Not at all. Look, as with you, Konstantin as well, Sam was and continues to remain as one of our heroes. I use his waking up app every morning. I think he is
really.
Yeah, I use Sam.
By the way, as you say, as with me, I'm not a particular fan of Sam Harris because he's an atheist lefty. I don't hate him, but he says some stuff. He's not one of my particular. He may be of you and Constant. Sorry, carry on.
Oh, okay, all right, cool. And when I met him, what a great guy, what a lovely guy. He came in, he sat down. Bear in mind, this is one of the biggest guests we've ever had. This is one of the biggest, in the culture war. He's a huge figure, and he sat down, and the mic started to play up, the text started to fall apart. Anton, our producer, who is a very handsome, rugged Greek man, ended up going sort of the colour of alabaster, turning completely drenched in sweat, looking rather like a man, who'd been caught in one of those pedo traps. And just be like, I don't know what I'm... Just
what are the pedo? Are they like bear traps? Or are they more of a sort of...
pedo hunters, net? That's it. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And looking so stressed. And Sam... And we'd already been waiting an hour, and he was talking with us about comedy, how much he loves Bill Burr. He turned around to Anton and did almost this kind of Jedi mind trick where he just held up his hand and went, I've got the rest of the afternoon off. It's all good. I'm enjoying the conversation. You take your time, it'll be fine. And then in 5 minutes, the tech just rectified itself, and he gave us an hour and a half more than we were meant to have.
Sam Harris is an actual Jedi, is what you're telling me.
Yeah.
The tech's working fine, and these aren't the droids you're looking for.
Yeah,
and then things
exactly.
just work. Wow.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
You ended his career, so... He should have used his Jedi skills up to not say that.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact he didn't even contact you about that and say, can you take out the dead children? But he just thought it was fine because he hates Trump so much.
Well, the thing is, there's a saying in Venezuela, which is cada loco con su tema, which means that everybody basically gets driven nuts by one thing. And there's one or two topics that every single person has that they cannot be rational over. Whether it's Trump, Everton Football Club, the Brexit, it doesn't matter. Everybody has that one thing. And
what's yours?
It's when people lecture me about socialism. It gets me so angry.
It's never been properly tried, Francis. You're like, it has.
Yeah, it's the only thing that helped my uncle lose. Yeah, to Venezuela. It's the only thing that helped my uncle lose weight.
Well, so some positives. So so your family's from Venezuela. You know the reality of socialism, and they tell you that wasn't real socialism, and then you want to smash them in the face.
Yeah, I just can't, because you try and have a conversation. They're like, no, it's not real socialism. And you go, all right, you just can't. But Sam has got two of those. He's got Trump and he's got COVID. And in every other thing, he is incredible. He's logical. He's ferociously analytical. And then when it comes to Trump, he's like, ah!
He's also got religion and Christianity, but at least his arguments there are more logic-based. But when it comes to the vaccines, it's just bonkers. He said that really bizarre thing recently. I'm definitely paraphrasing or misquoting, but it was sort of along the lines of, in a way, if it had been more serious, at least would have been able to find out, force more people to take the vaccine. It sounded like what he was saying to me, but then people said that wasn't what he was saying. But he has some bonkers views about the vaccine, very rabidly pro-vax, I would say, and rabidly anti-Trump. Everyone would agree with.
Yeah. But even so, it doesn't mean we actually didn't. The clip that went viral, we didn't clip. It was somebody else who clipped it, who is a rabid Trump supporter and obviously hated Sam Harris and then made it go viral. We reached out to Sam. He was fine. To be honest with you, it was mixed emotions actually, because you don't want someone to go through a pylon because of an interview that they did with you. That's not why we bring on Trigonometry. It's not why we brought you on. It's not why we brought Sam Harris on. It's not why we bring anybody on. We don't want people to go through a horrible time. We want people to come on, to speak, to share the way they see the world, for us to explore, push back, and then it's for the audience member to make up their own mind of whether they like the interviewee or not. That's our role as interviewers. To show. My role is like when you came in to do Trigonometry, you gave a great interview. My role as an interviewer was for the people to see the best version of Nick Dixon possible. That's what I wanted, and the most honest version.
I was going to say I'm always honest, but that time in the morning after I just had a pile on from the comedy industry, it may not have been the best Nick Dixon, but I certainly would have been an honest one. But yeah, you definitely get great interviews out of people, and I feel the same as you. I interviewed Andrew Bridge, and he said something that someone claimed may be libelous. The person concerned wouldn't sue anyway, probably. But the last thing I edited it out. I'm like, the last thing I want to do is get my guest in legal trouble or me. Yeah. But and people will take this as a great win that like they've made you do something. I'm like, no, that's just fine by me. I took an article down off a website because people were saying things I didn't like in the comments about me. I'll take anything down. I don't care. It already had a load of views. It leveled out in views anyway. People think this is a great victory for, the activist. It's like, I'm not bothered about that. But yeah, make your guests look good. Speaking of which, I've got so distracted from my own question. I forgot, what was it like doing Rogan and what was he like?
Joe Rogan is... What you see with Rogan is what you get. He is exactly as you see on the podcast. There's literally no difference. Genuinely, he's one of the most inspiring people I've ever met. What he's done, he's built the biggest podcast in the world. He's almost single-handedly taken on the American mainstream media. He didn't. When people were trying to cancel him, we get idiots on the internet or we get losers in the comedy industry. Joe Rogan had Joe Biden openly calling for his cancellation. It's a different level. I really liked him. I think he's a great comic. We went to his club afterwards. We saw Theo Von. We saw Tony Hinchcliffe. We saw Hans Kim. And then Joe came and headlined it and did about 50 minutes. Absolutely smashed it. A great guy. I was really impressed with him. I was really, really impressed with him.
And did he make you eat elk meat?
No, he didn't.
Ah, so there you go. So a lot of people say he forces you to eat elk meat and shoot a crossbow, but it's good to know that's not true.
I think he would. I think he sort of looked at me, mate, and thought if I try and shoot a crossbow, I'd probably end up doing more damage to myself, mate, than the actual. You know what I mean?
Smart. He's where he is for a reason. I've actually supported Theo Von, the Shepherd's Bush Empire, whatever it's called these days. Do you know that?
Yeah. No. Yeah. Actually, I remember it. How was it? I love Theo. I think
it was great. I smashed that one. It was quite funny because his American support act was sort of giving it the big one before the thing. Nice enough guy, but he was sort of, you could tell he thought I was going to be shit and was sort of telling me the rules like I was a moron, telling me what I had to say about Theo, like making me read it back like I'm a child. And then I go on and I'm thinking bro, you're in my backyard. This is a London gig. Yeah. I'm going to destroy this. And I just come on, just blaze the gig. Did much better than him. Then he respected me after. Yeah. And when I think about moments like that, maybe I could start to miss comedy because I'm up there in I don't know what it's called now. Is it called the O2 something or other? It's some big arena. It used to be Shepherd's Bush. It's a big theatre.
Is it Hammersmith Apollo, isn't it?
No, it's Shepherd's Bush, but now it's run by O2. It's a different venue, isn't it?
I don't know.
Shepherd's Bush, one of these big theatres anyway.
Yeah.
You're smashing a theatre. You're going, this is what it's all about. So maybe I could miss that part of it. But you did a podcast with him as well. What was that like?
Oh, it was great, man. He was... we were really high after doing Rogan because Rogan passed us a pure blunt spliff 2 hours in. So the last 2 hours of it, we were off our face. Got back to the house that we were renting, the Airbnb, interviewing Theo. And so we were talking and he just looked at me and he went, you guys we call it artism. And I'm like, thanks, Theo.
Nice. What was? Go on. He was a nice guy. Yeah. He took us for dinner and stuff like that, and very funny guy.
He's one of the most naturally talented comedians I've ever seen, if not the most naturally talented, in my opinion.
Yeah, he wasn't quite in my league, but he was good.
He is. I was so impressed with him. I saw him sit on a chair in front of 300 people and smash a shit out of a room, and I've never seen anyone do that before. Yeah.
Very impressive. And what was... I'm sorry to go through these. We can edit
no,
it.
Man,
if it gets too many, we can edit it. But I'm curious to know what Bill Burr was like.
Oh, Bill. Brutal.
You out of your mind?
He's brutal.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
He turned up in a black Ford Mustang, got up, got out, came in, jean jacket, walked in, and went, "Hey, how you doing?" I went, "That's what I want from Bill Burr. I want you to turn up in a black Ford Mustang.
All American,
I want you."
no nonsense.
Yeah, yeah, and he just sat down, and then he looked at Anton, our producer, who's a very sort of always in shape, muscly guy. I can't do his accent. Oh, there we go. That was smooth. And he went, why is your personal trainer your producer? Which Anton is a huge fan of Bill Burr, so he was fucking thrilled.
Yeah. There's a compliment.
You know,
yeah.
You know when a little dog knows it's about to be taken for a walk in the park and it just starts doing laps? Yeah, that's what he was doing practically.
Hilarious. All right, so I'm glad these people all lived up to your expectations. You were telling me, I don't know if this is a secret, but you were going to move to America, or you'd be open to moving to America, because like me, you think this country, our country, is basically finished.
Oh, man. Oh, no, I really love even more so than anything. Look, more than anything, I just love the American attitude. I just like they're fucking positive. I like the fact that they don't have a fucking class system.
Yeah,
you know,
it's sort of based. They do a bit, but it's based more just around money. It's not based on ancient, really complicated things where we can look at someone and immediately assess whether we could be friends with them, whether we'd be invited to their wedding based on their facial structure and accent.
Yeah, and the way they do their cuffs and the shoes that they wear.
Yeah.
You know,
we can. We're so weird. We're like evolved, like some sort of creature to just sort of know, like within a millisecond, people's class background to a pathetic degree. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we can talk because we can figure out we're roughly the same. Comprehensive school, normal people, and we know if someone's posh. This is my experience. We can like them, but we think they'll never truly treat us as an equal, and we can assess that within seconds.
Yeah, and that's it. And then you just go. And even if we become super successful and become millionaires, all we're going to do is just hang around with people like us who've made shitloads of money. And then we'll be looking at the posh people going, he's a fucking prick. Anyway, lobster linguine for me, please.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Who are my mates? It's people like Tonks from the north. Oh, a northern man who was a comedian, who is a comedian, a northern comedian male from a comprehensive school. I was like, yeah, that's just you, isn't it? It's just like, those are my friends.
Yeah.
So weird.
Yeah, it's so... And immediately, we're like dogs, you know. There's a... I'm not going to say his name because... But he's a really nice guy, and we just bumped into each other, and we haven't even known each other. And we started talking, and we just realised... And he just sent me a message going, do you want to meet down the cafe on Saturday? It's just like, we just know. We just know. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in America, they don't have that shit.
Do you reckon lower middle class can hang out with working class? Because like, if I sort of hang around people, maybe it's my barber, maybe it's someone else, and they're slightly more working class than me, and I'm more lower middle. My dad was working class, but I'm more probably lower middle. But we can hang out no problem at all. But I can't go up to posh. No. And a posh person could come down to me, but they probably won't. But for some reason, I think there's lower middle class and working class can hang out, and then and then it gets beyond that. We can't go above that. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that is, man.
But do the proper working class people secretly not trust me?
Yeah,
I don't know.
See, this is interesting because, like, if it's proper working class, then what invariably happens is that you've got to toughen up when you're around them because your lower middle class sensitivities get, a few bruises, don't they?
Yeah, you have to go back to school when you used to just say now and you said never said more than one syllable. And we used to say, in Cumbria, we said Larlan, which meant little, and now and summit, and like you got a sarnie, and everything was like, this is how I used to talk. That was how genuinely, that's how I was.
Yeah.
But you sort of go back, we've all been Londonified, and we go back to our roots.
Well, this is it. And so as a result of that, then you kind of revert back to where you were. But that's why I loved the US. It's like, because look, on the one hand, rabidly capitalist, maybe, but you just go like, no one gives a fuck. All they look at and go, can you make me money? You can make me money, you're fucking in.
Yeah.
They don't give a shit. And that is actually really refreshing, as opposed to the bullshit here.
Yeah, celebrating success, that must be the biggest difference. We just don't have that at all. we
don't.
just have hatred. And that's why everyone hates you for being on... The comedy industry will all hate you because you went on Rogan.
Yeah, well, that was it. That's why they all hated me. And I just find it funny. And I've tried to bring back that thing. So if I see my friend doing something or whatever else, I'll go quote tweet, or I'll go... Or if they're doing something great, I'll say, well done, man, that's awesome. I remember, I was saying to my friend, whatever he did, and I was just like, oh, that's great, man, you should be really happy. And he looked at me and was like, the fuck's the matter with you?
Been in America too long,
what's wrong with you?
You've been in America, yeah. You've changed.
You've changed. You let this Rogan shit go to your head. What do you mean? Why are you thanking me? What do you want?
Why are you being supportive and thinking that we can all make it together?
Yeah,
Mate.
When we really know that due to the layers of the class system, only one of us is going to make it out of here, and it is my duty to rip your throat out to ensure it's not you. What's going on?
That is hilarious. That is a good attitude to have. I mean, I've not always been like that. I can be resentful and silently plot on my own. I mean, definitely. But yeah, you're more like that. You're nicer than me, though. So, why do you think the country is finished, though? Britain, England, or Britain, either?
Well, look, I always think that there'll be a regeneration. Things will come around. Things will improve. I'm just very worried in it because I look at both sets of political parties and I see a complete dearth of ideas, vision, ability in most cases, and the will to change things. And if that being the case, then how are we going to get out of this? That's where I am.
Our political parties are totally detached from the people. I think you were saying to me last night, no one's got any new ideas. We've got reform, but they're basically like Lib Dems from the 90s. They don't really have any policies that are that exciting on the cultural level. So moribund political parties, they're useless. Yeah, no one's going to fix. We've got inflation, we've got strikes, we've got COVID mania, we've got net zero mania, we've got mass immigration, we've got illegal immigration, we've got a failing NHS, or failed, you could say, and we could go on. Yeah. And tax is ridiculously high. So you're looking at this and going, I don't see... I always think with a problem, you should never worry about a problem until you can't see a way out of a problem. But I'm looking at this problem and I can't see a way out, Nick, and that is really worrying me. And that's what worries me. Yeah, I wrote this piece called "England is Lost Forever" on my Substack.
I read it. It was great.
Thanks, man. You can see
it ruined my evening, but it was great.
Yeah, it was a heartfelt bit of pessimism. But so many people I've spoken to felt like this. And they're not all right-wing nutters. I mean, some of them are, obviously. But one person who's like a libertarian was like, had a very bleak view of it and said, well, we just have to soldier on. And some of the stuff he said was so even bleaker than me. And obviously I've had Carl Benjamin on the show. He basically thinks we're done, but we need to try anyway. Whereas he had that debate with Peter Hitchens on Twitter, who was like, it's over. Carl was like, it's over, but it's our duty to try. That's about as optimistic as it gets now. And I'll speak to just all sorts of normal people who are feeling this sense of loss and that the country's finished. I think my friend Paul is the only one I've heard who's like more optimistic. He's such an optimist. Toby Young, a little bit optimistic on our podcast, but so many people who are not even in the culture war as well just have a sense that the country's done.
Yeah, and I think that's really sad and that's really worrying. And I think a lot of people are looking at the UK and not really recognizing what is going on and what is happening to it, and mourning what it used to be or what they perceived it was. When the Queen died, and look, people were obviously upset because they had a real affinity with her and a connection with her, and she was an exemplary monarch. But I think it went far deeper than that. I think the reason people were so upset when she died is because they knew that was the last link with the old England. Yeah, if I'm being honest. And I think that's why. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think that they realised or understood that, but I think that's kind of what it was.
Yeah, it hit everyone, including me, much harder than we thought. And partly it's because she'd been in our lives for so long, and et cetera, and all that, and some sort of matriarchal figure to the country. But also, we all sense that's the end of an era, like you say. Yeah, it was the end of an era. I keep yanking these things out of my flipping head. Yeah, sorry. It was the end of an era. It was kind of the last links to Britain or the UK or England that we used to know from way back, and as a result of that, it's like we're somewhere completely different now.
And I think it really upsets people because people are looking round and they see things changing. And look, life, society always changes. And it is your duty to adapt to changes as best you can. But I think people are very uncomfortable with the rapid change of pace and the pace of it. And I think that's a problem.
Yeah, especially post 1997, there was this radical shift in mass immigration. This guy, Andrew Nether, said he wanted to rub the right's noses in diversity, was one quote. And all this, why was it done? That suggests it was deliberate. Some people say it wasn't deliberate. And that's just one of many factors. But yes, and there's this argument Carl Benjamin, about there's been this Anglo-Saxon nostalgia that we've always had. And that may be true, but I've certainly never known in my lifetime this number of people to feel this sense of disquiet. We may always have a touch of nostalgia, but we weren't going around thinking it's over like so many of us now are.
But then I'll offer a counterpoint to this argument. When we interviewed, I think it was Simon Jenkins, Guardian writer, very interesting actually. He was a very, very good journalist. And he said, look, I remember the 70s. People were saying the same thing about in the 70s. Thatcher came in, changed the country. And in 7-8 years, it was booming. So maybe that's not Thatcher, but maybe what we need is somebody who's got the strength, the toughness, the balls to take people on and to actually deliver a vision that works. Maybe that's what we need.
Maybe.
I don't know where this person is, but they're somewhere.
It was Liz Truss, Francis, and they got rid of her. She was the new Thatcher. They got rid of her. Well, they say Rishi Sunak's done very well with this Northern Ireland deal. Maybe it's Rishi. All my listeners thinking, no, it's not Rishi, Nick. Shut up. Obviously, it's not. We know that. It was a joke. But what does one do? Because I can't go to... Well, I read an article the other day. Huge numbers of people were going to Australia or planning to go to Australia. They're saying, that's it, we're going to Australia. I can't because, one, my job's here. But two, I got skin cancer when I was in Dubai. I'm very, very white. You can even tell on this stream. I'm looking at myself. I was accusing you of looking sort of jaundiced. I actually look ridiculously pink and awful. So I'm like, I'm far too white. I went to Dubai. I got skin cancer. I'm going to have to stay here, Francis, and defend our island home, whatever the cost may be. So I've got no chance. I've got no choice. But are you going to still get out or you have to stay here because of your podcast?
I don't know, mate. I don't know. Who knows what the future holds? But for the foreseeable, I'm going to stay in the UK. I'm going to stay in England. I'm going to stay in London. And then we'll see what happens.
All right.
But I think there's tough times ahead, mate, if I'm being brutally
honest. It could be a while. Well, let me just ask you about the podcast, because why it's done so well is a good question.
Working and doing trigonometry, it's a beast. It's a beast. It always has been. It's, I remember there was a comedian who came up to me and went to me, oh, I'd love to do trigonometry. And I go, no, you won't. And he goes, what do you mean? He goes, you don't want to work that hard. And he laughed and went, yeah, you're right. So I think it's you're working in a hyper-competitive environment. You're working where you're always improving. People around you are always improving. The thing is with podcasts, it's the top whatever percent, 0.1% who make any money at it. And you've always got to be constantly striving. You've always been constantly evolving. Constantine's brilliant at that. Brilliant at, looking, saying what do we need to do in order to move forward. I guess the more I've done trigonometry and my experiences of meeting, amazing people who've, genuinely changed the cultural zeitgeist. It's just made me realise that we all need to work together. Everybody in comedy needs to work together. There's no point in us going, oh, he's doing better than me, she's doing worse than me. That's just a low status, low grade mentality, which we all need to get over, myself included. I think it's our responsibility to help each other, pull each other up. The bigger my audience grows, the more I want to be able to help other comedians, the more I want to put their content in front of my audience. That's what I want to do. That's what Joe does. And he does that, and he's helped people have amazing careers. Bert Kreischer, Tom Segura, Theo Vaughn, Tim Dillon, all these people wouldn't be as successful as they are without Rogan. And what a wonderful lesson to observe. So for me, what I want to do is I want to stop thinking about who's doing better, who's doing worse. And I think we just got to start helping each other, because we're in an industry where no one helped each other. And everybody punched down. And everybody wanted to trip somebody up so they could get the opportunity. And in the end, who really won with that? We were all fucking miserable. And we were all looking over our shoulder. And we were all being envious. And we were all pretty... Well, I can only talk from my own experience. I wasn't happy with that. I would much rather be the person who, you know, can invite friends on, can create opportunities for other people so that they go off and succeed. That would mean loads to me. I've got projects of my own that I want to do with Trigonometry, but and invite you to come on and do some comedy. And if that means that then your following explodes, I'd be fucking delighted.
Yeah,
I don't want to think like we used to think on the circuit. It makes you mean-spirited, and it makes you angry, it makes you resentful. And all you do is you just turn that resentment on yourself. And to be honest, you, Nick, like, I'm 40, so are you. It's too fucking short. What's the point?
Well, that's right. I mean, don't say our ages in showbiz, but apart from that, yeah, you're absolutely right, man. And that's one reason I did Trigonometry. Would have done it anyway, I guess. It's a good show and everything. But because I thought it took real character for you and Konstantin to defend me when I was being attacked by the comedy industry. Two reasons it took character. One, because I hadn't always necessarily got on totally with Konstantin anyway, so he didn't have to do it. And two, because you're just putting your head above the parapet and defending an unpopular person at the time, which was me. So I thought that took great character. And that's why I wanted to do the podcast. I forgot to say it on the podcast, but I'll say it now because it's too early in the morning. I thought it took great character from you and Konstantin. I told you personally, but I forgot to say it on the podcast. And that was really great. And anyone who defended me kind of has a lifetime pass with me, not just because I'm so cool. I think maybe I did say this, not because I'm so cool, but because it was the right thing to do and it took balls.
And look, it angered me so much to see what they did to you. It made me so furious because it was bullying. That's all it was. It was just a group of people deciding to bully another person and misrepresent and try and ruin them. And before, in the past, there were times where I should have stood up for other people and I didn't, because I was in that industry and I worried how it would affect my chances. But now I'm out of it and I'm not going to have it anymore. I'm not going to let these people just think that they're entitled to wreck another person's career and reputation simply because they disagree with them. It's over. It's done. And what I want to do is I want to make Trigonometry as big as possible, so it's huge, so it's a Joe Rogan of Europe, so that great comics like yourselves, like Leo, like Nico, like all of these people who all deserve to be bigger than they are can come on, and we can give you a massive platform for you to do your stuff. And that's what I want to do. And that's the purpose of the show.
Brilliant. And if anyone doesn't know, he's talking about Nico Yearwood, who's an excellent comic. Yeah. And Leo Kurtz, of course, you will know. And if anyone doesn't know the little thing that happened to me, which is, Toby calls it a mini cancellation, because on the scale of cancellation, it's very, very small, more of a pile-on. But you can watch my Trigonometry episode, because we go into it there in a lot of detail. And you're right. Do you know what? We don't have to care about the comedy industry, because you're even talking like we're still in comedy. I don't even think I am anymore. I'm in this other world. But either way, both worlds, whatever this world we're in now, we need to have camaraderie. And whether you describe it as comedy or sort of alternative media or whatever you call it. And the other thing I'd say is, it's so funny, this thing about not caring what the comedy industry thinks anymore. That's been a great thing for me since I started writing for Spiked, and then I went on GB and all these other things. I've been able to say what I want. But the best was the other day, I was writing about Samantha Presti, she was sort of cancelled from the comedy industry, a comedian who said the wrong thing, got cancelled. So I wrote about it for the Daily Skeptic, and I just laid into Chortle, which is Chortle is a comedy blog that in the comedy industry is like waiting from the blessing from the Pope, from getting this guy Steve who writes this blog and secretly works for the Mail, but like he just writes this blog and comedians live and die by it. But I was in a position where I was able to call it something like low IQ typo-ridden screeds, and I'm like, no comedian could do this. I can attack Chortle. What can he do? I'm not really in the business anymore. I'm in a separate business. So that was a great moment for me, and we don't have to care. But you're right. When we're in comedy, It's very dog eat dog. It's backstabbing. It's nasty, and because there's not enough to go around, basically, is why. So everyone's just backstabbing.
Yeah, and it creates a what's it called? Not a deficient mentality, a scarcity mentality. Yeah. It's just not a nice way to live, man.
No.
Let's live by helping each other, by helping each other up, by retweeting each other's contents, by standing up for each other when people come for them.
You're turning into a socialist now, Francis. You sound like a commie.
You fucking commie. Yeah, well, I just, like, for however long we all have, I just want that to be the way that we live and that we exist, because it just makes for a better life.
Seems like a pretty positive message. Maybe we can end on that. Maybe we can just add one question to that, which is that how we win? Because I sort of ask people on this podcast how we win this culture war thing.
That is how you win, by being the example, by not going down to their level, by not engaging in smears, by not hurling epithets, by doing none of these things, by maintaining dignity, maintaining class, focusing on the arguments, and if you're an artist, producing great art, if you're a comedian, producing great comedy. Because if you do that, then you will win. Because their hands are tied, and what they say, the vast majority of them don't believe.
All right, brilliant. And if we do make a mistake, you can also just acknowledge a mistake, as you've done, as I've done, and move on and grow. Like you say, it sounds a bit sort of self-helpy, but like you were saying at the start, they don't allow for growth, but we need to allow for humans to fail and grow.
And we make mistakes because we're all human, because we're all flawed, and it's only by making mistakes that we can improve.
All right, what a positive message today. See, it's not just us bitching about the culture war. We did say the country is over, but we offered a positive ending. Close on something positive. End on your best joke in comedy. End on a positive message. Where can people find you, fans? Obviously, they'll know you, but what's your Twitter and all that stuff?
It's at Francis J. Foster, Instagram, Twitter. I'm on the Chinese spyware TikTok, if you want. Also on Facebook, Francis Foster Comedian. And just, check out Trigonometry and check out our great interview with Nick. It's brilliant.
Oh, thanks, man. And you're doing these videos now, what's the idea behind them?
The idea behind them is basically that no comedian wishes to go near these topics, whether it's the Isla Bryson, the man who identifies as a trans woman. He got court onset gender dysphoria, and now he doesn't want to go into prison.
So that's you as a kind of a character, but it's quite close to you. It's basically a man with a regional accent shouting about how pissed off they are with the world. But it's just a character, right?
He's kind of, mate. We'll call it a character.
Well, defence always worked for Stuart Lee. If you're getting any trouble, just say it's a character. That's best.
Exactly.
All right. Obviously, I'm a Nick Dixon comic. And give this podcast a 5-star rating. Thank you for all your ratings so far. People have descended on it with many great ratings, which is really good because, the activists are always trying to attack and find us and attack our podcast and stuff. But this is great. It's got a 4.9 out of 5 now, so you can't say much better than that. But go on there and give it a 5-star rating. And thank you very much for listening. And we'll see you again. And thanks to you, Francis.
No, it's been a pleasure, Nick. And look forward to seeing you at GB News sometime.
All right. Done.